Hello everybody, McLaren Week continues today with this, the rather stunningly specified 720S. So here's the car. I apologise in advance for a couple of things. I am walking around a car with a camera and a phone in my hand because I've got the spec sheet of this lovely sexy car here. I've got my assistant James kicking out the back there. He's good at driving, he's useless at cameras, so trust me, this is the best way for everybody. Now, list price, this 720, £262,890. Base price obviously is quite a bit less, but this car has quite a few things on it that are optional, some of which make perfect sense, some of which not so much. Now I'm going to start by talking about the overall look and shape of the 720. When the 720 came out, I just wasn't in love with the look at all. Its biggest mistake in my mind was the fact that as a supercar, it had no big side intake, and side intakes are a defining feature of a supercar in my mind. But it does have a side intake. They just hide it. It's there. So when you then come and look at a car from this angle, I get the camera up a little bit, it looks mean. And is it just me? Please tell me in the comments. It's got shades of Lamborghini Diablo, especially in this beautiful, beautiful purple, which is a colour called Mauvine Blue. It's an MSO defined colour, a snip at £7,750. Other options include the 12-speaker sound system, $3,450. The Gorilla Glass, which nearly every 720's got, that's on the door upper, so basically you can see through when you're inside the car, that's £3,100. Door mirrors are carbon fibre, although there's not a price attached to those, so that may be standard. Probably not, though it is McLaren after all. Sports exhaust, one of the more controversial bits of the car, £4,750 for an exhaust. It doesn't sound especially sporty, but we'll talk about that more on the move. The air intake on the hood is carbon fibre. Now, I see hood. I suspect they mean bonnet, is what they probably mean. The rear fender air intake, carbon fibre, and that's all the way back down here. There you go. Lots and lots of sexy carbon fibre. Soft closed doors. Again, there's not a price listed here, but they weren't standard on the 650. Trim inside, black and yellow. Love, love, love that. With electric heated memory seats at £2,730. As you get into a 720, there is in here a little panel, and you pull it, and you're in to this wonderful machine. And the door opens up and brings the top of it out. Very, very Ford GT40. And you probably also noticed the little display here moving on its own as well. So, manual steering column, again that's a standard. There is apparently some carbon fibre in here. So you've got the steering wheel, you've got the paddles, you've got the surround as well. That's £2,220. The steering wheel paddles, so the paddles alone, MSO defined carbon fibre paddles, £1,950. Not quite sure why they're MSO parts. I'm pretty sure lots of people want carbon fibre paddles. It's a 720S Performance. The body structure, dark palladium. So you can see just there. In some cars, that is exposed carbon, because that is part of the car's monocage 2 structure. Unlike the other cars, say, for example, the 570 over there and the 650, they just had a tub, which sort of went around here and so on. 720s, it extends up and forms almost a T here. And if you've read reviews on the 720 Spider, I think that has caused McLaren a few issues, because they evidently designed this car to have that sort of run over the top. You've then got floor mats, £330, volumetric alarm, £280, 360-degree parking cameras, which you can see a few of those dotted about the place, like at the front, £4,580. You get that standard on a Kia if you spend 40 grand. Tracking system, 640 quid. Vehicle lift, which is again completely essential, just over 2 grand. Now this car, in the list, it's got the sports wheels, but it actually has ultra lights on, which are very, very expensive. calipers, 1100 quid for yellow ones, and sensibly this car is optioned with P0 tyres, not anything super sticky or sporty, because there's a reason that it's all muddy and dirty. It gets used and it gets driven, and these cars are going to be updated on the channel on a semi-regular basis. So again, if you've got any questions, any queries about what it's really like to live with an amazing 720 horsepower supercar on a daily basis, do let me know. This is no normal YouTuber type thing. This is actual real people. One of the big things about this car is, in the owner's own words, he is old, his back is knackered, and his hip is knackered, and he actually finds this car very comfortable indeed. The cutout up here makes life so easy to get in and out. Compared to the old 650, this is a revelation. Now, let's have a look at everything, shall we? So, these seats. I mean, they are technically the same seat. It's the same frame as in the 570. If you haven't seen that video already, there's a link for you. Mix of leather and Alcantara. This yellow accenting. I don't like the Alcantara up here. That's personal preference. Now you'll notice that there's a phone holder stuck unceremoniously here for a good reason. There's nowhere sensible to put your damn phone. There's a cigarette lighter socket down here, but then it's next to a cup holder, which is no good for cups and no good for phones. That's quite a sexy air vent, although it doesn't really move. They're quite cool. They're quite nice. They're quite funky. Now you'll see, if I turn this car on or I start the ignition sequence, if I try, there we go, come on. Didn't mean to turn it on, but never mind. There you go, that flops up. So you got a screen up there, screen down here. I'm going to turn that off for now because I don't need it. Bmw Sound System, which also looks quite sexy. So if you see, it's actually this kind of glossy gunmetal type look, and you can see the BMW's famous Kevlar speaker grills just through there, really liven it up. That's one of the reasons that I think that car, 570 that's over there, should have it. Now, for me, the 720 Spider is not a great looking car, but the S Coupe has really grown on me. Notice also how okay, so that's an open window, and you notice that it's very tinted up top, but it feels nice and light and airy in here. You've also got a large storage space back here. So it's actually a super practical car. It's lovely, it's comfy, the view out is great, and you've got the amazing look at that at the side. That is supercar. That is pure and simple supercar. But of course, any supercar is defined by the way it drives. So, let's find out, shall we? Now, in my profession as a YouTuber, I am a very blessed soul. I get to drive a hell of a lot of seriously nice machinery on a fairly frequent basis, something for which I am eternally grateful. Now, for that very reason, I'm constantly worried about being rather blasé with regards to cars I should be really unbelievably excited about. I mean, when I've driven stuff like the XJ220, how can you look at something like this and be excited? Well, I can assure you that this car makes me very lusty. When the 720 debuted, I had absolutely zero interest in it. And although the shape slowly grew on me, it wasn't really until I saw this specific car where I looked at it and went, want one. And for me, that is the first and possibly most important stage of supercar ownership. If it's not something that you absolutely need to have, you've got to own that car, what's the point? You're just owning it to show off, which I am fairly confident is something that a lot of McLaren owners, other brands as well, will do. They'll buy the car because they want to just tell their mates down the pub that they've got one. Well, that's very much not the case for this car's owner, John. This follows a long line of mostly Porsche products with the odd Mercedes and BMW thrown in for good measure, and he's the sort of chap that'll always own the M5 or the 63 or the 911 Turbo. Yet he will concede this car is just a different thing altogether. Even coming, as I have today, from James's 570 Spider, it does feel just rather different. It feels that much more special. Maybe it's because I love the looks of it so much more that I'm just really, really excited to drive it. The view out the side, just this huge drop off here, this big old pocket which pulls the air into the side of the car, is just absolutely enormous, and it's just, well, it's not quite intimidating, but when you know the performance this thing's capable of, it's demands your respect. However, driving as I just have down an absolutely awful, terrible, lumpy, bumpy road, remarkably comfortable. This car does actually have comfort settings, unlike the 570, which only has normal. It's also got aero mode engaged, which is why the wing at the back is currently in its raised position. You can turn that off, which I might experiment with in a little bit. At road speeds, it's really not going to make much of a difference, but it's there. And I think having that wing raised does just make the car look that much more purposeful. Even just there, I'm starting to notice small differences between this and the 570. The gearbox in this feels just a little bit keener at lower RPM, although I can't imagine how it would be any better at high RPM because, well, the 570's gearbox is already absolutely brilliant. There is quite a bit more pickup from a lot lower down in this car too. The whole thing feels just that much more urgent and that much more keen to get going. The 570, although it does pull at lower RPM, needs a second or so before it really gets going. Now this, I'm sure, will still need a second or so before it really gets going, but there seems to be just that much more in reserve to begin with. Just gently prodding the throttle in this thing is just pulling the car along in an absolutely effortless manner. The view out is absolutely spectacular. Visibility in this thing is perfect. The 570 was slightly compromised by it being a Spider. This, no problem whatsoever. For a road like this, in comfort, it is absolutely fine. I'm struggling to explain the steering in this car, particularly in the context of the 570 that I've just come out of. If you've driven any sort of recent Lotus, the Evora in particular, the 570 steering will be quite familiar. It is absolutely world class. This, I would say, is not quite as good, but the turn-in, the reaction to your inputs is still just as perfect. That chassis, though, you can tell is just filtering out a little bit of the imperfections in the road, meaning you're just not getting the texture from the surface that you do in the 570. I wasn't even asking everything the car had there, and this thing is just savagely fast. I mean, absolutely, ridiculously, insanely, stupidly quick. And for those who don't know, I have owned quick cars in the past, and I've driven plenty of others. I owned for a long time a supercharged E92 M3, we're talking 625 horsepower, so I'm used to cars with big power figures, but this thing is just, don't care. Whatever you've driven, about 99 out of every 100 of you haven't driven something this fast. It's a little bit bananas. And it kind of needs to be, because it needs to make up for some of the things that McLaren are unfortunately lacking. This car, as mentioned in the walk around, has a list price of £262,000. It's 2 weeks old, and already one of the seals on the side has started to break away. The doors are coming apart too, and they seem to be held together with what looks like double-sided tape. And it's such an oddity when you look at masterful pieces of engineering, like the struts that support that beautiful wing at the back. McLaren, come on! I know you can build a brilliant car. I know you can. Oh, it's rampant. And I'm in the nanny modes. I'm in comfort, everything. And honestly, if that was the only mode that it gave me, wouldn't be a problem. Would not be a problem. I could end this review now. Steering's great, looks amazing, goes like the clappers, done. That would be it. But there is more to this car than that. There really, really is. I'll experiment with these a little bit, although in truth, for these kind of bad, broken British B roads, comfort is all you need. I'm going to turn the powertrain into sport, just for funsies really. I'm going to leave the suspension for now in comfort. I know this car's owner likes driving it in sporty because he likes a sort of firmer ride, and you can feel it firm up very much. If you then put it in track, it becomes really quite bumpy. It's unreal. I hear people talking about these cars as though they ride like a Rolls Royce or something like that, and that's not true. But it's not a million miles from the truth either. I'm currently using as a daily a Bmw 7 Series, the height of luxury and an extremely comfortable car. This still rides very well in my eyes, and that's pretty remarkable. Now the info display down here gives you all sorts of information that you want and stuff that you don't need. One thing that I think may be growing on me is the little sporty display. You press a button, the dash folds down, and it just gives you a bare bones display giving you gear, revs, speed. That's all you need. That's absolutely all that you need. As a big Lotus fan, this car is quite interesting too, because it's very much a sort of what if. In many ways, I suppose you could nearly look at this car as the Esprit that never was, because many of the people involved in this car's construction were from Lotus. They're very heavily involved in Lotus and chassis engineers and whatnot, and if you look at the underside of any McLaren, you'll see that it looks quite a bit like a Lotus. One of my favourite views is from right at the back, where if you get down low you can see parts of the rear subframe and the gearbox hanging there, a view familiar to anyone that sort of idolises old Ferraris, perhaps most famously the 288 GTO. Now, despite the fact that this is a coupe, it feels nice and light and airy in here, courtesy of that Gorilla Glass in the roof, which honestly I just can't imagine having one of these without. One other thing which is not good in this car is the entertainment system down here. It's still the same old ancient Iris system as in the 570, and really it's just not quite good enough. Now, I'm currently trying to get a radio station playing so that I can judge whether that very expensive Bowers & Wilkins sound system was worth the money. Unfortunately, it's not working. The car is refusing to play anything. We're cycling through stations and nothing is happening. And it's being operated. I got my friend James in the passenger seat. He's got the 570, so he knows how this system works. There is absolutely zero reason for it to not work. It is dead. James's dad tells me that if he gets in the car in the morning and he tries to rush it by doing something like, I don't know, using the infotainment, it just crashes and he has to restart the car. Look, I know there's people out there that will say, yeah, but it's a McLaren, yeah, but it's a supercar, you're used to it. I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, it's £250,000 car, and you know, Ford can get this stuff right. So it just, please McLaren, you're embarrassing yourself. The system in the new GT, McLaren say, is 5 times faster than this one and infinitely better in every single way, and I hope that is the case, because currently it's oh, McLaren, oh, honestly, you know, I try so hard sometimes to make these reviews nice and decent and balanced, and to talk about the stuff that other people might not, and this stuff happens. So I guess I'll just have to go back to talking about how nice the car is to drive. My passenger has just made an excellent point, actually. We've both driven and passengered in quite a few very fast cars. Now, I've been in the passenger seat of a lot of cars that feel fast, but when you're in the driver's seat, things always feel quite different. Very, very few cars have I ever driven that feel that genuinely fast from this seat. This one does. I mean, it really, really does. Let me give you an example. We're about to transition from 40 mile an hour to 60 mile an hour. I am not doing silly rails. I'm in third gear. Okay, I'm going to get the car straightened out, and I'm doing just shy of 40 mile an hour, foot down. That's it. there we go. That's 60. Done. This thing is obscene. It just doesn't care. I mean, I went out with James's dad in his car briefly, and I can see why he enjoys it so much. The level of driver interaction and feedback, and actually, the quicker you go, actually, now I'm at national speed limit. It is actually, oh, it popped a little bit as well. It is actually talking to me at lower RPM. It was missing some of the communication that the 570 has. You can feel the traction control trying to work. You can feel it pulling back because these are quoted 720 horsepower. As with the 570, McLaren, I think, are being quite modest. There are differing reports as to how much power these cars really have, but the figures I tend to believe are anywhere between about 750 and 780 horsepower. And unlike some of their rivals, McLaren also know how to use a set of scales properly. This is genuinely a sub 1500 kilo car. In fact, it's closer to around 1450 depending on specification, and that's impressive. That's seriously impressive. To put that into context, this car weighs the actual same as my Evora with twice the power. But, and this is the big but, the biggest challenge this car has to face. I mean, this is an incredibly competent car, and McLaren suffered from that. They suffered from that in their early days. When the 12C came out, you may recall that McLaren introduced this car. You know, they're essentially, in many ways, a new brand. And they unleashed this thing on the world with its technical name, and they said, right, we know you like the 458. Well, we bought one, and we measured our car against it, and we've decided that it is better. Well, unfortunately, McLaren, there is more to supercar ownership than that. You cannot simply take a car and put a ruler against it and go, yep, it's the quickest, therefore it's the best. That's not quite how that works. And so this car's biggest challenge is how does it remain exciting and engaging at lower speeds? And this car really achieves that. It genuinely, hand on heart, does. It's stupendously fast. Really crazy, oh my Jesus wept fast. But even cruising, even following a VW Touran, it's not boring. Not at all. And this is a problem for me. I really want this car. It is better than the 570. Yes, there are things about the 570 which are a touch better, but this does feel just a little bit more in every kind of way. The 570, I guess, suffers from the fact that we all know that it's basically the same engine used in other cars but turned down. This is McLaren just making something the best that they possibly can, and when they learn how to glue the panels on properly, they're going to have something truly unbeatable. And if you're in the market for a car right about now, well, it is a buyer's market, at least at the time of filming it was. There's a rainbow over there, and you know what? I think I'm going to go and chase the end of it, because I'm going to try and get a pot of gold, and when I got it, I want me a 720. I want me this one. Really wants it. It's savage, but it's delicate. It's like a fondant fancy with an axe in it. That's my best Clarksonism. It's all I've got. It's all I've got. You know what, actually? It's not even stealing away all my concentration, even in the way that my M3 would. My M3, you have one eye open on it. You wouldn't relax it. I mean, John says in this car that he can't really relax when he's driving it. I think that's probably because he's being a wally and he's driving it in sport mode all the time. If you put it into comfort mode, or heaven forbid, you put it into auto mode, actually, it can be perfectly docile, absolutely pleasant and lovely. And then when you want it to be, it's a psycho. Oh, I love this car. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you've enjoyed. Please like, comment below. Which of the cars featured on McLaren Week would you want to take home? For me, I suspect it's probably going to be this. See you for the next one. Bye-bye.